Well, welcome to episode 2 of the Journey Cast.
We did this more than once.
Yeah, we're going to keep doing it, hopefully.
What?
Yeah.
You're professionals. You got one down.
Today we got with us Jeff Goring. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you who might not know.
For myself, I'm originally from Toronto area, and moved out to Medicine Hat about 5 years ago. A little bit about myself. I traveled doing breakdancing professionally for about 10 to 12 years, and I'm really into graffiti.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for about 25 years.
Yeah, because you organized the Mural Fest. Some people might know what that is. Downtown, there's some of these awesome murals that pop up.
Yep.
You run that.
Yeah. So it's fun, and it's all. It's cool because it's all volunteer. It's just a way to bring in quality painters, to show local painters, and whenever we bring somebody in, we also use a local artist. So it's kind of like we're using both. And then, but it's for me, it's a way to bring in quality artists that I know will come in, will be good for the community, and we're not dealing with huge budgets. It's all just kind of going to businesses saying, so do you want to sponsor this? We can promote it for the whole year, and we're going to change this wall and make it look amazing.
Yeah.
And it's been cool. Now I meet with Vancouver, Chilliwack, Nelson, Kelowna, Calgary, and Jasper. Every second month, we come together and just talk about Mural Fests and how we do it, and what's the best, what's some wins, who's some artists to work with, and
awesome.
Yeah, there's some really awesome ones around town. I was sad when the one got burnt down. Yeah.
We had and Jarvis is like he just travels internationally. Travels all over the world, and he's literally like right now he's in Mexico. But since July, he's been done a 25-story building in LA, did one in Texas, Istanbul, Denmark, Turkey, before the earthquakes, and but he's been just. And it's cool. We've had a lot of real big name guys come through, which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah,
like
unless you're in that world.
It's true. Like even the one guy who did the side of the Mez, his name's Alexander Bacon. His graffiti artist name is Bacon.
Yeah.
But he just did a Miles Morales Spider-Man cover for Marvel.
Oh wow.
So it's really cool because that's like he's working for Marvel, and now he's got a painting in our city, and media has his own can out now through a company. He's the guy who did one on North Railway. So it's for me, it's cool to see, and a lot of times it's cool to see Christian artists. I try to bring in, just guys, and I'm looking at bringing in a husband and wife team from New Zealand this year if it works out financially. That's all it is, and if it all works out, and they're of the Maori culture, so they'll come and teach a bit about the indigenous in the South Pacific, and. So it's something that's just I love it. I enjoy it. I mean, it's so
there's awesome murals around town, guys.
I have a question
to thank Jeff for
about this. So how does one become a graffiti artist? Because, in my mind, graffiti is typically where it's not supposed to be. Yeah. I'm thinking, like something like tagged here or there,
you do it
specifically
the legal way.
Trains.
Yes.
You see a lot of trains.
It's so true. And for me, I've been painting graffiti since about 96. So I'm a little older, super mature, super tall, but you can't tell because I'm sitting down.
Yes.
And it got to a point for me, it was just kind of like, all right, God, I'm going to take you seriously. But and about 15, 16, I was kind of like, God, I want to take you seriously with my life. But I love graffiti. I love breakdancing. And I just got to the point where I'm like, God, I don't know how you can use these, but I pray you can use them. And it's been amazing just because it's like, this is what I'm into. And I haven't painted illegally in over 20 years, but I'm part of a crew called Gospel Graffiti, which is Christian graffiti writers from all over the world. We have guys in Denmark, Australia, Guatemala, San Francisco, and it's cool. But it's just and that's the same with a lot of kids and a lot of people. You all have gifts and abilities you love, but when you give it to God, He gives you amazing opportunities with it. Yeah. And I'm not by far not the best. I want to be the best at what I can do, not so I can boast to myself, but just so I can be like, you know what, this is what God's given me.
And you're enjoying it. You're having a good time doing it.
Totally.
Like you're not doing something that's like, oh, like I really don't like, this is not my thing. This is not what I'm good at. This is not what I want to do. This isn't what I care about.
And it's cool because this is it's like a mission field with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when I'm painting a wall with guys, and it got to the point where I'm like, I can't paint illegally because I can't be saying I'm a Christian and then teaching Sunday school. Or I was working at
lurking in dark alleys.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and just can't be out painting illegally. So I just got to the point where I'm like, God, you gave me these desires. You gave me this ability. You need to give me the opportunity. So it's and it's been amazing to see how. And for me, it's really big on being in the culture. Right. So like for trains, I don't paint trains. I still love them. I love taking pictures of them. And now I can take pictures and send it to the guys. You get to know who's who. You get to know, I can see when a train goes by, okay,
like,
this one's
so-and-so.
Yeah, this one's been in Texas. This one's been in Vancouver. This one's been in Toronto. And I can see that just from the names that go by. And there's a whole, it's with anything you do. Like you play hockey, you're on a team of like 10 to 12 people that a lot of them are not Christian. A lot of them are go through different things in their lives, but you get an opportunity to reach out to them.
So how do you approach that for some of our students listening? Like, how do you be that light in that world, in that darkness? Like, what was your approach to that?
A lot of it
like,
for me,
it's much easier said than done. Like, right? Like when I used to be an electrician, and that's, not a great environment to be in. Like a lot of guys they're swearing all the time. Their lifestyles aren't great, and then they find out you're a Christian, and then it's like, oh, okay, well,
I think a lot of
it going to judge us for everything.
That's it too. It's our lifestyle. We're called to love people.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like these guys paying illegally, sure, that's your thing. I'm not into that. So first off, it starts off with you got to make a stand in your own life. You got to say, all right, God, I trust you. I'm going to live for you. So I'm not going to do these things anymore. I'm not going to talk that way. I'm not going to watch those movies. I'm not going to. And this was big in my with the breakdancing crew. I'm part of a crew called Supernaturals.
Yeah.
And but they were a breakdancing crew that started back in '92, which was originally a gang.
Yeah.
And so, but now it's a good mix of like big old school gangster black guys, some happy Chinese guys, and the odd awkward happy white guy. I mean, and my wife's a breakdancer as well and a dancer, so she's a part of the crew as well. And with that, it started with just loving all these guys, and they all knew we were Christian and making a stand, saying, you know what, guys, you guys know I'm not going to go watch that. I'm trying to live this way.
Did they bother you for it? Like, did they make fun of you a bit, or
they kind of just? But they see
respect you?
They see that after a while, I still hear all the Christian jokes, and I still hear. I get all the memes sent to me too,
Bible
like all
that,
all the jokes. Yeah. But they also see how I genuinely love these guys.
Yeah,
and they also see how when you really care for people and when you really live in biblical principles and you're not wavering to be like, but those guys are pretty cool. I got to do this to be cool. When you're not wavering or anything, it's you're staying with God. They see God working in your life.
Yeah.
So
when your actions are lining up with what you believe.
Totally.
They're like, because that's the thing is, it's, well, you're a hypocrite too. Like everyone's a hypocrite. It's like, well, no, when you're actually living for Jesus and you're loving people the way you talk about, then they're like, oh no, this person's the real deal. And it takes I might not agree with them, but I can respect them.
And it takes time for them to see that. So that means that I have to be with them.
Yeah.
And I'm really big on being a Christian in the world. Yeah. And it's hard.
But not of the world.
It's not, not of it at all. Yeah. I'm still living this way. And when you do that, because we live in such a selfish world, people see that, people see that if you actually take a genuine interest in people and you actually care about people, they're like, whoa, something's different.
Yeah. It stands out.
Because it seems like everyone in the world they're about themselves.
Yeah.
And they're very inward focused. But for us as Christians, and this was the big thing I've been learning the last few years, the whole love your neighbor thing, which is like Jesus talks about 2 great commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, there's a part in Luke that someone's like, well, Jesus, who's my neighbor? And Jesus is like, all right. I don't know if he was like that so much. But
I hope so.
He could have done a hair flip, know? But then he goes into the Good Samaritan story.
Yeah.
And that's the example Jesus gives us of loving people. That's
not just people who are like you that you like.
Like that whole story.
Samaritan, they didn't even know that person.
Yeah.
So he should have not helped them. And that people would have been like, oh yeah, I get that.
So, and it's crazy because that's the example that God gives us to love people. Where did you have a Jewish person and a Samaritan person who at that time they were enemies?
Yeah.
So they would be fighting constantly. So this person who comes along, any plans that he had for that day is done. Any plans of going to the movies with his friends. Any plans of like, oh, I got to go to soccer. Any plans of, oh, I want to go home and chill. That's done because he goes out of his way, stops, helps this dude, puts him on his donkey, and then so he's using energy now. Now he's physically walking, getting tired, getting drained. Stops at a place and puts him up in a hotel, so that costs money.
Pays his
and then
bills.
says, pays all his bills, and then says, anything he needs, I'll be back in a few days to pay some more.
Yeah.
And that's our example of loving people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I think when people hear love your neighbor as yourself, they're, my friends, my family.
Yeah.
The people I'm close to. And absolutely, them too. But like, it's also the people that you actually don't really want to help. The people that you're maybe not getting along with the best. The people that like, the person that made fun of you the last week, the person who didn't stand up for you when they should have.
And it's for me, I have the choice of this is how I'm living.
Yeah.
These guys could be living this way and that way, but for me, I'm choosing to this way. I'm choosing to love people when I always say loving people sucks.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to do.
That.
It's hard to do.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
It's hard to do, but that's
especially when you're genuinely loving
well,
people.
yeah, that's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. But we were never told that being a Christian was easy.
No.
We were never told. And so for me, I know going into a breakdancing jam, I know being in a scene, I know being in a graffiti jam or graffiti event or out painting with buddies. I'm called to love these dudes. And some of them are all over. Some of them are kind of wild. Some of them are crazy. Some of them are on, just some heavier stuff. And you're like, but I'm still called to
love them.
God's brought these people into my life. And what can I do to be a blessing in their life?
Yeah.
And when you're with people have questions. You get pulled aside, say, hey, what does the Bible say about smoking weed? What does the Bible say about this? Hey, does it really say this? Or, but then you also get the, hey, pray for me. I'm going through this.
Yeah.
And they know.
Because they can't pray for them. They don't want to pray for themselves. They don't know how to, but they're willing to come and ask you because they trust you.
Yep.
Well,
because you built that relationship.
I built that relationship.
Yeah.
And that's the same for my wife too. And so they know us in that scene, and we still get guys stopping by our house, driving across Canada all the time, hanging out, and it's cool.
Yeah.
And you see God move in their lives, but I got to make a stand.
Yeah.
I'm still going to do graffiti legally.
Legally.
And I'm still going to break dance.
Yeah.
Still involved in those scenes, but I'm going to live this way, and I'm going to treat people the way the Bible says.
But you're not compromising in any of those scenes.
No.
Yeah.
And they know I make mistakes, and I make,
Yeah.
So it's, check this list. No, I'm just joking. But it's God, I've given you my life.
Yep.
That's every aspect in my life. That's my graffiti.
Yeah.
That's my breakdancing. That's how I treat my kids. That's how I treat my wife. That's how I treat other people. I've given you every aspect of my life, and it's cool because you see them come through.
Yep.
And so.
I think our teens right now are really struggling because in school, if you're a Christian, there's an automatic stamp on your life that means you hate people.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I experienced that when I was in electrical too.
Yeah.
It's like, so you hate gay people. It's like,
because at its core, if you're a Jesus follower, it's like literally the exact opposite of that. Like we should be the most loving people. We should be known for being the most loving. And yet somehow there's just like this label that's been flipped on us that, you're a Christian. That means you hate people.
Yeah. You judge people that aren't living the way you're living then.
Yeah. And
it's
I think,
no.
Yeah.
We want something better for you, but we're not judging you for it.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things we can do then, right, is live the example with our lives.
Yeah.
So like, whoever God's brought into your life as your neighbor that you can influence, right? Like whether that's the person who shares a locker like next to you or is in your class or whatever, like they can think that you super hate people, but if you're showing with your life consistently that you actually just really love people, right? That's going to show, going to show the truth.
You can flip the coin on that. You can, like prove them wrong.
Yeah.
No, I actually don't hate people. I'm going to go out of my way today to show you that I love people.
Because Jesus loved us, right?
And the best thing to do is, one thing for me, I always would pray, God, give me opportunities. Because it's just like when I go to these breakdancing jams, I remember growing up going to these jams and competitions or anywhere I'd go, I'd just pray. Or if I go to a youth conference and I'm doing some workshops or some speaking and stuff, I'm always praying, God, who do you want me to talk to? Make some kids stand out. Or God, just give me opportunities.
Right.
And it's amazing. If you go to when I said God, just pray kids you want to stand out that you want me to talk to. And you'll see kids will be like, okay, that kid stands out.
Something's
I don't know why.
out. Yeah.
But I got to talk to that kid for some reason. And so at the weekend we'll go on. You're like, okay, I didn't get a chance to talk to that kid. Where is that kid?
Yeah.
And then you'll be like in an elevator and you're like, oh, hey man, what up?
Yeah.
And it's just like, but God gives you opportunities.
Yeah.
But we have to be, when you ask for them, and it's amazing, even with breakdancing stuff, I'd be in we'd call them battles. So you go to these.
It's like a dance off, or
kind of like it's battle sounds cool in the dance off. But it's but we'd go to these things and then like I've had times where you go there and then all of a sudden you're in we call it a cipher. It's like a circle. Somebody will go down, throw down, do some moves, come up.
I feel like I've seen it in the movies.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So it's but we do that. But then you go there and then you have people be like, hey man, pray for me. I gotta go to Iraq. pray for me, my girlfriend just dumped me. Pray for me, my wife and kids left me. And and then it gets me talking about people.
Yeah.
And the lighting, it's hot in here. Oh. So I guess. But
no, it's okay.
But but it's one of the things, but there's hurting people out there. But for us, for me, it's using my abilities and gifts to be, that God can put me in places where I can reach people that are hurting.
Well, and the enemy wants us to believe that, he wants that, hey, like that reaction of, so you hate people because you're a Christian. That's the reaction. That's the lie that he's told.
Yeah.
Those who don't know, Christ, who haven't experienced that as a kind of a form of defense. And we can't let that discourage us. Like when I did electrical, I worked with this guy, and he hated Christians. Like he just absolutely hated them. And so when he found out I was a Christian, he was like, he had like a lot of questions. He was drilling me about stuff.
Yeah.
And I did the best to stand my ground, like what I knew, and we actually had like a pretty decent relationship by the time I left that company. Yeah. And so I'd worked for another company, and then he actually showed up and he started working for them too. And the first thing he said to me, he's like, "Oh, Levi, my favorite Christian."
Yeah.
Nice.
And I was like, this coming from the guy who claims, and he, hates Christians, right? But he's like, "No, like I respect you though, because I'm like, dude, like, no, we're not all judgy people. Like, because there are people who are living.
Everyone has bad experiences with Christians,
and we're human.
But it's cool too because
perfect.
We do a lot of when I was doing a lot more breakdance and doing shows and stuff. We'd go to these youth conferences, and there's not tons of Christian breakdancers I bring, but I'd always bring my non-Christian buddies, and we do have them just like do some breaking, do some showy stuff, and some, or even if we were working for a hip hop artist, we do some stuff. But it was cool because they were all just like, "Oh, I love going to these church shows because everyone's so nice," and a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah.
So so we all have like bad Christian stories. Like, oh, that's your aunt, But it's one of these where it's cool because God uses so many people in little ways that so much more than we know.
Yeah.
And what if we said no?
Yeah.
Like God gives us these opportunities, puts us in these places with specific people. And, you could just be like, I'd prefer to illegally do this.
Yeah.
Right? You'd be like, no, I don't feel like using this for God. Right? Like oh, that's scary. Or like, I don't feel like having that conversation. Right? Like we have opportunities to say no, but then what do we miss out on?
Well, a cool thing is like in I think it's John 6. You got this story where Jesus feeds these 5,000 people.
Yeah.
You can see it chosen season 3, I guess. But I look at that too, where it's a little kid, and all he has is a little lunch with 5 loaves, 2 fish, 5 loaves.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe 3 fish. I don't know. 2 or 3 fish.
There was some fish and loaves.
Fish and loaves. But all this kid had for his lunch was this.
Yeah.
And he says, "All right, well, I'll give it to Jesus."
Yeah.
And so, for me, all I really got is my dad jokes, graffiti, and breakdancing. And so, but when you give it to God, look what he can do with your life.
Yeah.
And whether if you're a 14-year-old kid thinking, "Oh, I don't even know what I do for my life. I play video games. I just sit at home. When you give your life to God, there's so much in you. When you give your electrician work, when you give your media work, your whatever, you give to God, God can use it in an amazing way. But it's up to us to first be like, "All right, God, I give you this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you started making that choice to kind of stand up for your belief and still be a part of those groups and those circles to try and minister to that and be the light in those areas, what did you do? Because I'm sure you probably experienced this when you're tempted with living kind of the old way and living, and you're tempted with stuff like
fitting in.
Well, it's like you got to have. Yeah. You got to have stuff.
What did you do to prevent that? Like what kind of steps did you take?
A lot of it was for me. Whenever I'd go to if we were going on a trip or something, 'cause we traveled a lot with our breakdancing crew. Like we battled in Korea, the UK. We battled, So when we traveled, I'd always have people praying. So first off, when you're praying, we get people praying for. You get 2 or 3 Christian guys and girls that you can know that you can be honest with.
Yeah.
And just be like, hey,
Keep
we're going
accountable.
Here. Yeah. And it's you got to make some unpopular choices.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, you know what? I'm not going to drink. I'm cool. And just set it up where that night, you know what? I'm not going to smoke weed. I'm not going to I'm going to stick, it's sticking with it. And it's not, you may look a little bit different, but you get through it, and the guys respect it.
And too, there's times I think where we're just like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's just this little thing. It's just, but it's the slippery slope.
It's hard.
It's like, you know what? I don't really think this is a great movie my friends are going to, but I'll go just because, because they're all going. It's like, well, but that's just one thing on top of another thing on top of another thing. It's going to add up.
I find too, from even myself, when I'm hanging with my crew too much, my breakdancing crew, I found there'd be times where I'd be like, oh, I wouldn't normally say that. I wouldn't normally do that.
Right.
But then I haven't been reading my Bible. I haven't been taking time to get away from myself to kind of get towards God, keep close with God. So there's things you have to do as well too that we kind of have to do just regularly as a Christian. As if we're not going towards God, are you really going? You know what I mean? Like we got to.
And these aren't chores or traditions just for the sake of it. It's like that's actually bringing life to you.
And
it's actually keeping you close to God.
And that's it, man. It's been. I don't regret anything. I love my life. I love the fact that I said, you know what, God, I pray you can use me. I know the fact that I knew I was different.
Yeah.
But I knew too, it's just one of the things too where God brings so much joy in your life. God brings so much hope and peace to know that, you know what, I'm going through a tough time now, but God does say he's never going to leave me.
Yeah.
Or God does say he can give me a peace through this crappy situation. And you see how God just helps you along the way.
Yeah.
And you see how God's placed, and when you see your buddy's lives change, it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you experienced some of your friends coming to know Christ through that?
Yeah, it's been really cool. Oh, guys, this is like, it's tough. I don't really. Well,
that's because that's must be an incredible feeling. Like like you've done all this work to try and and it's still not you that can take the glory, right? Obviously, but like it's so. Well, it's such a gift to see that happen.
It's cool when you see people's lives change.
Yeah.
From going from before where they were into drugs and heavy drugs just because they felt hopeless. They felt like there was nothing else felt like they're not going anywhere with their life.
Yeah.
To find a God that created them.
Yeah.
To give them such a hope and a joy and to see their whole lives change from where they were to where they are now.
Yeah.
And to see how, it's cool when it's weird at first because they're like, yo, Jeff, let's go pray. And you're like, yeah.
Sorry, who are you?
You wanna really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
But it's
and then it clicks in and you're like, hurry.
Yeah. But it's one of the things too where it's just when you find the joy, because people need hope.
Yeah.
People need the joy that God brings. People need to know that, man, they can be stuff they're dealing with, depression they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Man, God can set you free from that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to deal with that. The anxiety and the stress you're dealing with, man, God can give you a peace. God can help and to know that you feel like a failure, you know what? God's got a plan for you.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things too where it's cool to see.
Yeah.
And it's like I've had a few buddies.
You got to fully surrender, right?
Yeah.
It's just not like, oh, you can have my weekends, God, and then I'm going to have the rest of my week. It's you can
probably the opposite.
You can have my Tuesdays.
Have when I'm doing homework, all the fun stuff happens on the weekends.
Yeah. It's like you have to fully surrender.
Yep.
Like you've got to give your full life to him. Yeah. It's not like, because it just doesn't work when you only give a part of it.
And the best thing is about being in these situations with people is when you talk to them the fact that, you know what, God doesn't love me any more than he loves you.
Yep.
The fact that I'll go to church or it'd be like, oh, he went to Bible college? Oh, he's some sort of priest or something, but it's just like,
they're all good things, but that's not what makes God love you. Yeah.
And it's cool. Like it's when you talk to certain people, I think of certain people when I talk to them about when you just say like, yeah, he doesn't love me anymore. And you can see when it kind of clicks.
Yeah.
When it's kind of like, well, but I've done this, and well, that
it's
doesn't matter.
Achievement based,
Man, it's just like God loves you for who you are.
Yeah.
He created you.
Yeah.
And he's got a plan for you, and he wants to give you a peace and a joy and to work things out in your life. And you still have hard times. Like you have that verse John 10:10 where it says, "In this world you will have trouble, but I've overcome the world." And to know that when you're going through tough situations, when you're going through crappy situations, God's going to help you through it.
Yeah.
And you look back and you're like, oh, God was there and there and there, and it's. And living for God it's totally an everyday thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You're just kind of like, God, all right, I pray you'd help me today. Help me deal with this. Oh, I screwed up in that. All right, God, help me break that habit. Help me to break that,
I think that's key. I think you pointed out something really key. It's like we can say one time, we have like one emotional night, like, oh God, I give you everything, right? Yeah. But then the next day we're like, taking this back, this is what I want. Right? But like every morning to have a prayer like that, where you start out your day and say like, okay, God, here's today, give this to you, right? Like that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's a daily giving
And we just talked about that
handing over
with Spencer too on like the last, like it just make that a habit. Like it just needs to be, it doesn't need to be this long drawn out thing. If you don't have the words for it, just say, hey God, today is yours, you know?
Yeah. Just like a continuous, laying down of self and letting God
and I think
do what
too,
he wants to do.
You know, there's, I mean, I feel like there's been points in my life where it's like, okay, I think these things that I'm not great at, you can make better. But I'm pretty happy with how I am with these things in my life, God. So like, I don't really trust that what you have is better because I think I've got it pretty good. Like, no, it's like what he has is much better. And it's different because it's better. Because like what you're doing is like, it's not really working. Like it's not sustainable. You know, how you're dealing with this thing in your life. Sure, you're getting through it today, but long term, like you got to give everything. It's got to be 100%.
And it's, you know what? It's not one of those things too where it's like, oh, but there's all these rules or all that. You know what? It's God just he provides for you. He helps out for you. And I mean, he knows, like even for me and my wife runs like even how we met. I would always tell my crew, just be like, you know what? They'd always be like, Jeff, you're not going to find a Christian girl who's hot, who's into hip hop. You know, and can put up with your jokes. So I was like, guys, got it. I would always hang on to Matthew 6:33, which says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be working out. So I'd always be like, all right, God, you got someone for me. I trust you, and you're going to work it out. Yeah. And then, you know, but it's cool because all my non-Christian buddies would be like, bro, just find somebody, just convert them. You're not going to, you know. Yeah. And I'd be like, no, God's got somebody. And my wife was living in Medicine Hat at the time.
Yes, pretty great.
But, and she was running, she needed a breakdancer for a hip hop, for a show called YC down in Edmonton. So she needed one for that. And so the guys she usually has, they couldn't make it. So they're like, we'll find you somebody. So they ended up calling my buddy, Dizzy, who he's one of the dudes who I've seen fully get saved, change his life around. Cool. And he's like he was always top in the world. Like this dude's phenomenal. Yeah. His own style. Just really cool. Just well known. Yeah. And so they brought him out there, and he was like, well, can I bring somebody with me? And I was like, okay, sure. So he ended up bringing me along, and we kind of met that way. But just how God can kind of work it out, where it's kind of like, and you trusted him to work it out. There's a few, exactly. I trusted him. He knows what's best for me.
Just to be clear, she liked hip hop and was not ugly.
No, she's got a picture here, guys. This is my
God provided.
Lovely. I'm a big fan. And she can put it with my jokes.
Oh, right. That was the other
95% of the time. Yeah. So it's one of the things too. It's when you give God your life, he works it out. You know what I mean? You don't have to have that worry of, you know, what am I doing? How am I going to do this? You still work hard with it, whatever you do, whatever you're involved with. But it's one of the things you can have that peace, that trust, that, you know what? It doesn't look like I'm gonna work it out. But he works it all out. And it's amazing to see. Yeah. And you just kind of smile, like, oh God, what are we going to do next? How are we going to do this? All right, we trust you. And, so it's, and it's just God just opens and closes doors. And no one because a lot of times we think, oh, life's got to be like this. We got to be like this, and it's got to be set up like this. And by this age, I'll have this. But it's one of these too where you're just kind of like, God, I gave you my life. Yeah. That's every aspect in it. That's my finances. That's who I'm going to marry. That's my kids. That's my, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's job.
What was the hardest thing for you that you had to let go of?
Like to give up to kind of follow God.
To give. Well, not necessarily give up to follow God, but like to just give to Him. To just trust to Him.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is too. I don't know if it is maybe just financial stuff too. It's just kind of like, because I know me and my wife, we know we're called to something different. Yeah, we're called to do kind of ministry stuff, and life looks different. Yeah, but when we know
especially
we're not,
for this full-time ministry too.
Well, yeah, and you can't.
It's much different.
Yeah, and you can't compare your life to other people. Yeah. So it's one of the things that's sticking with God. What do you have for us? We thought it would look like this. Yeah. But it looks like this, which is still awesome. But it's just kind of like it's His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Right. So I trust Him. Right. So it's yeah.
One of my favorite examples of that, there was a sermon I was once at in a church, and the pastor was talking about giving up everything. And I remember the couple in front of me, the more that the pastor talks, like, what are you willing to give up? Are you giving up everything? He just tighter and tighter held his arm around his wife or girlfriend or whatever it was. I'm like, someone's having an argument with God right in front of me.
Yeah.
You're just watching this
I'm
unfold.
actually going to hold this even tighter.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. So what, when you gave your life to God, you know, you said you're like, no, okay, I'm going to fully. So like, were you raised in a Christian home?
Yeah, I kind of grew up in a Christian home. My parents went to church downtown Toronto at this place called Faith Temple. And, I was typical, kind of like, didn't want to go. Wasn't, you know, I was like, okay, we're going to church on Sunday. Whose house can I sleep over Saturday night so I don't have to go?
Right.
And it wasn't until I was about 15 years old, I kind of really realized. And for me, I was dealing with I'm not the best in school. Might shock you guys. No, I look like a doctor. But
Don't compare yourself.
Maybe more like Dr. Dre, or I don't know, but those type of doctors. But it's one of the things where it's and I was dealing with the kind of feeling like a failure, feeling like I wasn't going anywhere because I'm into graffiti and breakdancing. They're not two big career choices on career days.
Not super popular.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's but it's one of the things too where I was kind of like I was dealing with that, but then it wasn't until I was at a Christian camp. It was just kind of like I heard this one pastor talking all about that Jeremiah 29:11 verse, which is like, and when that verse was written, like Jeremiah, the actual prophet, he was in like slavery at the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, and so what it's talking about for me, I kind of realized I'm like, well,
Do you want to say the verse for those kids?
Oh, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, plans to not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And for me to hear that as a kid who's not doing very good in school, was told I wasn't going to go very many places. I have a speech impediment, failed a grade back when they actually failed kids. It's
consequences.
Yeah, but I failed a grade, so I had all these things that I was just kind of like looking at it statistically. I wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
but it's one of the things too where you hear like, okay, well, this God, he's got a plan for my life, and then so I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll give it a go.
Yeah,
and it was just reassuring to be like, you know what, God's got a plan for my life.
Right.
I'm still struggling in school. Got to work hard. Got to get at least pass.
Right.
And then to trust He's got a plan for my life. So it was cool. And then you keep reading. You're like, oh well, it says in Genesis 1:27, it says He created me in His image. So if I'm created by God, He's got a plan for my life. Then I should really trust Him. Yeah. So I started to kind of just being like, all right, God, I'm into that. And then it was a few years later, I kind of realized, well, can't be painting illegally. And
a little bit of conviction.
So it's like, it's kind of one, but it's one of the things too where I was kind of just like, all right, God, I still love graffiti.
Yeah.
I can't be painting illegally. How do I do
this?
Yeah. And
to honor you.
Yeah. And I know the exact spot where it was for breakdancing.
Yeah.
Where I breakdancing graffiti, I just stood outside this drop-in center place that I used to run we'd come and breakdance called East Shore, where I said, God, I don't know how you can use breaking or graffiti, but I give it to you.
Yeah.
I pray you can use it.
Yeah.
And it's been, I traveled with Manifest for about 12 years and just doing hip hop stuff all over the place and just being involved in the hip hop scene. And just, like I said, it comes back to that, whatever you're involved with, whether it's even like coding or whether it's like creating music or creating, you give it to God. And you'll be amazed where you can take it.
He gave you these skills for a reason, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes we forget that, like, but I should be an accountant. Not that there's anything wrong with being an accountant.
If you're good at numbers and you want to, it's a...
But don't pick something else just because you think what you have.
Well, and that would probably be a tough sell to your parents, eh? Like, I'm going to break dance and do graffiti,
I think they were
Mom
just
and
kind of
Dad.
like, it was definitely one of those things where I think they were kind of like, oh, what are we going to
We're going to pray harder.
Yeah. So it's, but it just comes to the point where you give what you have to God, whatever you are, no matter who you are, no matter what you feel you're going through.
Yeah, and He's not surprised by it.
No.
Yeah.
So what were the things, because you were kind of like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. What were the things that were like happening in your life that you're like, okay, this is actually worth doing? Like, because you seem, I don't know, I don't want to assume here, but like kind of seemed like you're like, oh, like I'll give this a try because it sounds like God's got a plan for me. Well, what were the things that were like happening where you were like, oh, okay, well, I need to give my life?
I think a lot of it was I was kind of already involved with it, and you start hearing like you hear a little bit about, and it was crazy because I went right from getting saved in the summer and really taking God seriously to that October, I think, starting to teach Sunday school because we just didn't have a teacher at my school. So I'm like, 15, 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's figure this out. I'm learning.
Yeah.
We're all learning, you know?
Let's learn together.
But it's, I think it was one of those things too. And for me, it was just, I was really big on just, like you say, just having these abilities and then staying with them because it was, and even with Bible college, I went to Bible college. I didn't actually finish. I still have like 6 credits left.
Oh, you're so close.
Oh, I know. It was probably bad. But so don't do that, guys. Finish.
Yeah.
And, but it was one of those things too where it's, I found for me it was really tough. I did it all part-time.
Yeah.
Because the Bible college I went to was in Toronto. Because I found it tough to break away from my non-Christian friends.
Right.
To like fully kind of like takes me so long to build respect and to show these guys I actually love and care for them and be involved with these guys' life, to leave for 4 years and then come back. Hey guys, I'm completely new, completely different, a lot more knowledge. You know? And so so I did it all part time. It was just more just keeping involved all these guys' lives. And it's still some of my best friends are still not serving God, but they still they still know that we're praying for them. They still know that when they go through stuff.
Well, you've seen some breakthrough for some of them, right?
Oh, totally.
That have made those steps.
Totally.
So it's totally worth doing.
Yeah. Well, and it's we all got different things we're going through, and it's just kind of with these guys. But you have to be involved in people's lives for them to really open up with you.
Yep.
And one thing like we talk about too with kind of ministry and stuff, when you're praying for opportunities, when people come to your head, like what you're thinking about, it's following up on those.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, why am I thinking about this person? I haven't talked to them in 2 years. All right, I'll send them a message. You know
I
what I
think,
mean?
like what you said is important. Like, building those relationships. Like someone that you haven't talked to in 5 years and comes up to you like, hey, you need Jesus. It's like, you don't know what I'm dealing with. You don't know what I'm going through. And like, they do need Jesus, but like, build that relationship with that person.
Well, it's just
so
we
that
have
you can
people,
be that voice in their life.
It's just when and I love the verse in Philippians 2:3-5 says, do not look at your own interests, but look at the interests of others, for that's the attitude of Christ.
Yeah.
And so it's when you genuinely care with people.
Yeah.
And to go, and the amazing thing with young people is that young people can do this.
Oh,
because like later on in that chapter, it's Paul talking about this guy Timothy, who was young, but he says, you know what? I have no one else like Timothy who takes a genuine interest in your welfare.
Yeah.
And if we really care for people, try our hardest to love people the way the Good Samaritan did, that example, man, you're going to see a difference and change in people's lives.
I think that in itself makes a huge difference. Like, I think culture hits us really, really hard with focus more on yourself.
Yeah.
And who are you? And look inwards all the time and like more self-care.
Yeah.
But actually, like, I mean, what is that? It's kind of cheesy. It's like love isn't love till you give it away. But it's like, it's very similar to that. It's like when you start investing in other people, like that, those are moments that give you life, really, right?
Yeah.
Like building connections with people, checking in with other people, praying for other people, right? Putting them ahead of yourself. Like, and that makes a huge difference, right? If everyone else is looking inward and you're like doing all this care, like that makes an impact.
Well, if we know that we gave our lives to God, He's going to take care of us, and we still have to kind of we still have to work, hustle our butt off at places, get stuff done. It's not just
He's
like
giving you opportunities to like,
sitting on our own throne.
Exactly. It's one of those things too, where it's if we know God's going to take care of us, and Christianity for us, if we call ourselves Christian, we're living for other people.
Yeah.
Jesus came to serve.
Yeah.
But why do we expect people to serve us? And we live in such, like I said this earlier, we live in such a selfish generation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as Christians, we look different because we go, you know what, that family needs food. We bought them some food.
Yeah.
You know that this people need that. You know what? I sold this. I got them some money.
Yeah. The culture is all about taking care of yourself and let others fend for themselves. And if they fail, you're better than them.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
right.
It's like,
Yeah.
It's like they sucked and you succeeded.
And it's
Be
like
proud of your
moving
success.
up the ladder. How can you get ahead? How can you get,
And there's nothing wrong with succeeding. There's nothing wrong with doing well. But if you're doing it and you're not actually even caring for others in the process.
Yeah.
Like if you're always putting yourself first, there's something wrong with that.
And it's true, and that's it too. It's not putting ourselves first. It's it's one thing when you succeed, it's amazing because you get some of these people who I got a buddy who he's a good investor.
Yeah.
Loves God, solid dude, but his goal is to give away so much money that the government's kind of like, what are you doing? You know, and it's just,
are you laundering this?
He's successful.
No, they're just going to keep it. Okay.
Yeah, he's successful, so he can give it away and change other people's lives.
Actually, and then God tends to give those people more opportunities. Hey,
it's amazing
because he can trust them.
Yeah,
He's like, he can trust God. God
Totally.
can trust him with those finances. It's not going to corrupt him.
It's refreshing too when you live your life for other people. Like Proverbs 11:25 says, "He who refreshes others refreshes himself." And if you want to feel refreshed, do something for somebody else.
Yeah.
Do something that's something else that you're not going to get a return for. It's not like you have hidden agendas or like I was in Hawaii, which sounds really dope, and I was man, this church. I was like, I want to be a blessing on them. I want to really help them out and support them. I want to do them a graffiti painting, but in my mind, I'm thinking, if I do a graffiti painting for them, they're gonna give me an honorarium. It's gonna be dope. You know, they'll give me something.
Now we get to live in Hawaii.
Yeah. So I'm thinking. Sure. But it was like, so I'm thinking, if I do this, then really, I'm thinking, I'll get this, and this. So I had alternative motives doing this painting for them. So I did this painting for them. It came out really cool. Yeah. And I got nothing.
Yeah.
And that was like,
just kind of humbled you a little bit.
I was like frustrated because I was like, man, I thought they'd pay for the paint. I thought they'd do this.
Yep.
But then I heard God kind of say, that's not a blessing.
Yeah.
I'm not being a blessing. That was me doing that out of selfishness.
Right.
And it's one of the things too where it's when you trust God with it, God sees it. God knows our heart. God knows our true meaning our true motive for giving.
Yep.
God knows our true motive for what we do stuff. And it's you just do it, God, and leave it to God. God will reward you. God will bless you. God will work it out.
Yeah.
It's not up to me to be like, it's and people nowadays, nobody likes a phony.
No.
Yeah.
Nobody likes someone who's fake. And that's the same for Christians.
Yeah.
Nobody likes someone who says...
You can see it.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, I do this, I worship, I do that, you know what I mean? Oh, people watching? Cool. Uh-huh. You know, it's just be yourself.
Yeah.
I know I'm different. I know I'm into hip hop. I know I'm into this stuff. This is who I am, but I'm still going to love God and he's going to use me.
Yeah.
Will I look like the next person who's like, looks like Hillsong's up on stage? Probably not.
Yeah.
You know?
But God has them doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's being content in every situation, whether you have a lot, whether you have a little.
Yeah.
And it's trusting God with your life because he's got you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Jeff, appreciate your words of wisdom. Appreciate the coffee.
No worries. Sponsored by. No, it's not brought to you by.
And some of these kids listening you might know Jeff because Jeff works at the Christian school. Feel free to reach out to Jeff if you're around there. If you need some prayer, or if
any
you need
questions or anything, they hit me up on Instagram, or they can hit me up on.
You need some graffiti.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
legally
we go.
Done.
Yeah, legally. Yeah, yeah. You I've seen recently you did some pretty cool mural in someone's room. That was pretty cool.
And I've had some, and it's like I say, it's that back to you trust God with it. With anything you do, you want to be good at it. For me, I want to be the best at graffiti, not so I can be like, hey, what's up? I'm Jeff. Yeah. But just so the fact that it
can give those gifts,
gives you more influence.
Yeah.
So if you could leave our listeners with one challenge.
One challenge?
Yeah.
I would say just being yourself and trusting God in who he's made you. Like Psalms 139:14 says, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And to know that you have mistakes, you have things that you look at as flaws, but God looks at as, you know what, I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
And God's going to, and trust him.
Yeah.
Because it's the sheer fact that when you trust God, he's going to work out a thing. I know. So I think that would be it. Just being yourself. Don't try to be like somebody else. Don't try to be like, oh, this person looks like this. I got to be like that. Just got to be you who God's created you to be.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you.
We'll see you around.
Cool. See you later.